going to begin with drawing numbers from the hat, and according to the number you draw, your seat will be numbered across there. Okay.
Oh, you want me to draw?
I think ladies first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Abby. Start you.
Good.
All right. I don't think there's an advantage to one or the other. All right, right in the middle there.
Okay, mine does not have a number.
It's tiny. Yeah.
I need to put my. All right, and so would you?
Sorry to break in, but Township Hall is muted right now, so you need to unmute, Jonathan.
All right,
Rob, can you hear us?
that was a great pre-trial for the cameraman.
There you go. Now you're all set.
Let's get going.
Thank you, Rob. Rob is our exterior technical expert. All right, I'll start again. Good morning. My name is Pam Boyd, editor of Scio Community Newsletter. Welcome to the Trustee Town Hall Q&A. Disclaimer, this is not a township government initiated event. This event is a resident organized event, though respective members of 2 township commissions are the co-chairs. This event is taking place in Scio Township Hall. Scio Township Hall is open for use by the public for such occasions. A few thank yous before we begin. First, I want to thank our candidates, Patrick McLaughlin, Jillian Kerry, Abby Vakilian, for agreeing to participate in this Q&A. I want to thank the co-chairs Will Weber and John Boyd, and more thank yous to Jonathan Greenberg, who is running the Zoom machine, and to Jan Culbertson, our timekeeper. Let's see, I'm going to go off script here for a second. When Will Weber was asking questions about why I asked him to be a co-chair and how it was going to be run, I knew I had chosen well. His questions before he agreed were very valuable into how this came together, and I want to thank you, Will. I want to thank you to all the residents here and on Zoom. A final thank you goes to the residents who sent in questions. A few residents sent in several, while
Jonathan, you're muted again.
Rob, are you able to hear us now?
Now we can hear you again. Just be careful of that mute button.
And Pam, can I ask you to step to your left 2 steps, just because this camera zoom mover thing isn't working?
Step to your left by 2. Up to your other left. Yeah.
There you go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
all right, okay, so remember, the questions are picked by the luck of the draw. If your question is not picked, you might consider sending your questions directly to the candidates after the Q&A. I have to say this was a team effort from the very beginning, and I'm pleased at how well we worked together. Will, John, and myself, our goal was fairness and transparency. Speaking of transparency, keeping it transparent, the co-chairs vetted the questions. I did not. They chose to use one question. They chose not to use one question submitted and removed a line from a second question. Otherwise, all of the questions submitted are in the hat. All right, let's get started. The questions were well mixed before, but I'm going to ask Jan to do the magic touch and mix them around again before we get started. And yeah, all right. And then we have the second hat. What happened to the second? Oh, I'll get it. I'll get it. You guys go ahead when you get started. So Will is
Okay.
first.
All right. Well, I want to thank those of you who came in person and those of you who are here via Zoom. And especially thank you for the many questions we received. Some people sent in quite a few questions, some people one. There's a lot of redundancy and we'll deal with that as it comes along. To introduce myself, just briefly, since I don't think I'm very well known. I came to Ann Arbor 47 years ago after being a Peace Corps volunteer in Nepal. And that was an experience that really gave me a sense of the virtues and values and rewards of being a volunteer. And one of the things that has attracted me about Scio is there are so many volunteers doing good things for the community. And in a sense, our candidates on the board are nearly volunteers given how little they're paid. And I've appreciated what they've been doing. Although I am not a member of a party, I don't think of myself as a partisan. I really don't know any of the candidates personally. When I arrived, I was in graduate school and I was a businessman here, most of the time located in Scio Township. So I've had some familiarity over the years with some of the issues. Pam gave me permission to just say a little bit about my passion in the township, which is the Land Preservation Commission. Remind you that we're going to have a millage on the November ballot, November 8th. And this will be a renewal of a millage that's been, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, a very successful way to generate funds which are matched with funds from other sources, local, state, and federal, to acquire either actual outright purchase or easements to protect farmland and natural areas. And these areas are now being fed into parks and trails and other opportunities for township residents. Do I have a little bit of time left? Just in terms of the transparency, I want to reassure people as well that I was somewhat hesitant in accepting because I know there's been contention in the township and concern about transparency in its broadest form. And Jonathan and I really went over all these questions, and I was really impressed by the quality of the questions. Some are short, some are a little more lengthy, but I think they've generally kept to the tenor that we're trying to create, which is to reduce the tensions, create a more cooperative attitude, and really focus on the issues of the township rather than personalities. So it's in that spirit, I hope we can proceed.
All right, and I'm John Boyd, best known in Scio Township as the husband of Pamela Boyd. I lived in Ann Arbor since my parents relocated here in '61, and with the exception of about 4 years living on campus, I've lived on the west side of Ann Arbor the balance of that time, and 30 years here in Scio Township. So, and with that in mind, Jan, you wanna?
Sure. I'm Jan Culbertson, and by profession, I'm an architect. I grew up in Ann Arbor, moved here with my parents when WCC started, went to the Ann Arbor Public Schools. When I got married, we lived in Ann Arbor a bit, and then we moved to Scio Township in 1989, and I've been here ever since. My role is Planning Commission Chair, and my passion is really sustainability. And with several other volunteers, we started the Environmental Sustainability Task Force, which was charged by the Planning Commission. And I want to draw everyone's attention to the little poster out there where we also have a survey. There's a card you can take with a QR code, or you can get to the survey link on the sustainability task force page on Scio's website. So we have 5 awesome C's volunteers. C's, well, actually, and our volunteers are practicum students. They're getting their masters and they're developing our community engagement portion of the kind of the climate action and environmental sustainability plan that we have out there. So I would encourage everyone to be sure to take that survey. And we're interested in hearing from you.
You want to listen?
Thank you very much. All right, and I am going to go about 30 seconds left. I'm going to try and raise my hand. So rather than trying to interrupt, so.
Okay, well, I think we can begin then with the questions. We'll,
Actually, I think the candidates.
That's right, excuse
We
me.
have their candidate introductions, and we'll start with Patrick, number 1.
Good morning. And thank you, Pam, for arranging this. Thank you to all the volunteers, and thank you to all the residents who are in attendance and sent in questions online.
No.
I'm eager to share my vision of the future of Scio Township with you, and hopefully show some distinct differences between me and the other candidates. My name is Patrick McLaughlin. My family and I moved here 22 years ago. I initially came for a job opportunity. I was offered a position with a small startup that was doing voice recognition technology in Ann Arbor. And it was a refreshing change of pace for me because prior to that, I'd worked at a corporate, global corporate communications department for more than 10 years. So I feel like my background is appropriate for the position. After working in Ann Arbor, I actually accepted a position in Detroit at an agency that was working with technology companies that were dealing with manufacturing. And in 2008, I started my own firm because I discovered there's no scenic routes on the commute between Detroit and Ann Arbor. And work from home, and I still operate that today. A few years back, I went into a semi-retirement mode and had additional time where I could provide some community service. And in 2018, I started working with the Parks Advisory Board and served on that board until earlier this year when I was appointed as a trustee on the Board of Trustees. I'm also a board member of the Loch Alpine Sanitary Authority, and I also operate as a member of the Transportation Alternative Planning Committee. I feel that my background is suitable for service, and it's been a privilege for me to serve up to this point, and I look forward to continuing in that service if I should prevail in the coming election. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Abby Vakilian. I migrated to United States at age 16 from a country currently called Iran. Came here to be an exchange student for 1 year and go back. At the time, there was a government of Shahin part. There was very good relations. While we were here, the government changed. We couldn't go back. Lost numerous family members, including my 16-year-old brother. Finally, we were able to get some of the immediate family out. My father, who was an orthopedic and hand surgeon, and a brigadier general in the Army Corps, my mother and my sister. Once we were here, we applied for political asylum because we were no longer welcome in our home country, and we lost our fundamental rights overnight by change of government. That made me very cognizant of the rights and the privileges that this country offers to its citizens that many people take it for granted. Ever since I came here at age 16, even though I couldn't vote, I got involved with politics, with issues, and at the minute that I could vote, I registered, I voted. Throughout the years, I have given myself a lot of unpaid jobs as an election observer in Michigan, Ohio, Florida. Fundamentally, I believe, as the progressive Democrats do, which is what I label myself as, for the right of the people to be able to retire with dignity and with enough self-sufficiency. We believe in ending poverty. We believe in equal rights under the law. We believe in an all-inclusive government which reaches to all segments of society, regardless of the race, gender background, or gender identity. We also believe that as Democrats, that although we do not want to have a very large government, we also do not want to have an extremely small government, which is the size of a postage stamp that cannot do any of the jobs for the middle class and lower class. Fundamentally, there is a battle in this country, which started with FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who used the promise of greater society to start Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, GI Bill of Rights, and all of that was done with governmental help. And he was an enigma because he was a very rich person, and the rest of the rich would tell him, "You're raising your own taxes," and he would respond, "Yes, but I owe it to give something back to society." So my fundamental engagement is to make sure that our government is the most inclusive. By the way of education, I have 2 degrees, political science and economics, which I obtained here in the United States. And I think looking forward, I've been involved with many organizations such as ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, and so on. I can't go through the whole list, we don't have time. So I look forward to creating a balance between both business and social justice, as well as an inclusive government which reaches out to all segments of its society. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gillian Carey. I am a Scio Township resident. I've been in Scio since 2011. And before that, the west side of Ann Arbor for 11 years. 11 seems to be the magic number. And before that, I lived in Milan. We had a farm with my 3 small children. I have an unusual background to some degree because I have a lot of different experiences. So going from a farmer, stay-at-home mom, 3 teenage daughters, I can pretty much handle anything. I'm self-employed. I am a life coach. I have that's since 2003. I became involved in Scio Township during the trash fiasco in like 2019. So, which, trash, there's nothing wrong with trash and garbage service. However, what I saw was there was issues with process and procedures. So I began researching and studying and voicing, and which attracted many residents. So since then, and I never ever thought I would be involved in politics, in government, but as a resident, I realize it's very important for us to, as residents, to pay attention to our local government and to be involved. So along with the issues that I saw, it wasn't just policies and procedures. It was also the basic foundations were not being taken care of. Our fire department building is just one example. Also, residents' voices were not heard. There was a lack of communication from our township officials with residents. And it's very important that residents are involved. So that's why I got involved. I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also residents' voices are heard. So I do enjoy living in Scio Township. I love the semi-rural character. I have a large garden. If anybody ever drives by, you can see it. That's my passion and my downtime. My meditation, so to speak. But other than that, I have been busy with my self-employment. I do help a lot of clients regarding their lives and what they want to create in their life. So here I am. Thank you.
All right. Next, we want to be sure that candidates are familiar with the rules. You've all been provided with them in advance. Are there any questions about that or any uncertainties? All comfortable? Okay, all right. I think then we'll begin. We'll alternately choose questions. So they've been mixed. Here we go. Been waiting for this moment. This question from Hob Calhoun. In 2020, 73.2% of township citizens voted for a parks and pathway millage so the township could develop, maintain, and manage a system of preserves, parks, and pathways. This November, our citizens will be asked if they want to renew our land preservation millage to be able to continue our land protection program to work with voluntary landowners to preserve farms and forests in our township. In your mind, how important is the passage of this millage for our township and why? That's for you, Patrick.
Okay, well, thank you for that question. I am supporter of the Parks and Pathways millage. And I think that it's really done wonderful things that we're starting to see the fruit of now. Through the generosity of the taxpayers here, we've been able to secure properties and now have 4 different parks that are available that have parking lots and trails so that people can enjoy them and take walks. We currently have a pavilion being built, or 2 of them actually, a picnic pavilion at the Marshall Park. And this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for picnics for families. And it's also going to be a great opportunity to get onto the Z pathway. So I think that as our township grows and matures, we're seeing things come to fruition that we've been working on for several years. And there's going to be additional parklands that are also going to be open up eventually. And we'll see many opportunities for recreation and encouraging people to be active and get outside and enjoy the property around here. So I'm thoroughly in support of that millage. I think it's done wonderful things for us, and we're going to just start to see the opportunities that it brings. So I think it makes it this a much more desirable community in which to live, and it'll be attractive for potential residents, and people will be able to enjoy those for generations to come.
Okay, I'll get started, and this question will be for you, Abby. It's from resident Ryan Yapple. He asks, the current zoning and site plan approval process is much lengthier in Scio Township than other local townships governments. What would you do to work with residents and developers to make Scio an attractive location for residents and development?
Well, I believe in a balance. A process which is too short is not going to catch all the mistakes. And once you grant an application, then the township and the rest of its citizens and residents are stuck with that. So as a small business owner, I do believe that the government should not be overinflated, but I also believe the government should not be underinflated. So I believe that the process would be that we would set up a process that when somebody applies for a zoning or a zoning variance or whatever it is, that going through the process of planning commission, and if at some points, if there is a need to refer it to an engineering firm, to our planners, or for a study of, let's say, environmental issues, because some of the zonings that we get in Scio Township, we have a lot of automotive industry base, which we are dealing with a large volume of chemicals at each one of these locations, that if God forbid we have a fire, we're going to have a mess on our hand. So Scio Township is more of a complex township. We are at $1.5+ billion tax collection, or basically that brings in the benefit to the citizens of Scio that their taxes are lower because the businesses are paid. So although we can create a balance and streamline all the process, Scio's process is always going to be more complicated than some of the more simplified townships, which don't have the number of the businesses that we have. They don't have the makeup that we have. They're not dealing with the industry standards or chemicals. For example, Scio Township study was done back in 2018 that it needs at least 2 fire stations, that it needs a ladder truck. We have a lot of businesses which really, if there is a fire, they would require a ladder truck. We have a cooperating agreement with Ann Arbor, but if Ann Arbor is using their ladder truck, and we have a major chemical fire here, we have a 4 or 5 story building that now we are approving has a fire, we need to have our own ladder truck. One of the problems is that these studies which are done, there's a group in the government which now is engaging gridlock, they study again. 2018, a study was done saying that your response for Southeast Scio Township is too slow, people will end up getting hurt, dying, insurance rate is too high. Instead of acting on that, they study that study. We have another issue. The sewage pipe from Scio Township to Ann Arbor is very old. It could break at any time. There is a need for us to replicate and put another one next to it while we maintain this one. If that breaks, we're going to have a worse environmental disaster than the plume that we are dealing with. We would not be able to line up enough semi-trucks on I-94 or M40 to be able to draw the sewage. And just imagine what will happen. All the businesses won't be able to even flush their toilets. Unfortunately, currently, the way that the government in Scio is run, I will quit.
Okay. Question for you, Jillian. It's from David Reed. Do you feel the financial staff is adequate for a township with a $1.4 billion tax base? If not, what should be done?
The financial staff we are very short. From what I understand, we have one full-time employee, and she's on family medical leave, doing her best to work when she can. So that leaves us, and we're talking about the finance department, not the assessor department and whatnot. We do have a deputy treasurer and who also happens to be the deputy supervisor that is filling in to do other financial tasks, I guess we should say. And we in the utilities department, we have a temporary, I believe she's temporary, part-time billing clerk. There's been a lot of issues with our finances, and we cannot have such a small staffed department and be able to handle our 1.8 or is it 4 billion revenue income. We are already seeing a lot of issues, have been for a while, but even it's in the past couple, let's say 2 months, there have been numerous missing millages on our tax bill. So it has to be added to the next one. There's also, our water bills are not being calculated properly. There's been a lot of issues. And this is not to say that our staff that we have is to blame. This is about the township coming together, realizing what our basic foundation is, and working through and coming up with solutions to fix that. This is for the benefit of all residents. And when there is a weak link in our system, it affects all of us. Thank you.
Okay, next question, and this is for you, Patrick, it's from Kathleen Knoll. Many residents have noted a lack of transparency with the current Scio board. Do you see a lack of transparency with this board? And please provide examples and what you might do to improve this.
Lack of transparency in the board. I'm unaware of what it is that Kathy is referring to, frankly. I think that everything is out in the open. You know, obviously everything is based on the Open Meetings Act, OMA. Our agendas are published along with all of the supporting material online for people to review. And all of our discussions are recorded and publicly available. So I'm not really certain what lack of transparency it is that I can address. I can't provide any examples.
I can.
Okay, the next question for you, Abby, from Diane Denson. What do you see as the most pressing issues in Scio Township?
Lack of transparency on the board. Number two, in the last election, you see, when I label myself as a progressive Democrat, that's not just a label. We believe in certain fundamental policies which should be implemented. A bunch of people leading the supervisor, Will Hathaway, they ran as Democrats because they knew that in Scio Township, unless they say they're a Democrat, they don't have a good chance of getting elected. Treasurer Donna Palmer has told me in person, anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a democratic person, but I had to write Democrat because otherwise I wouldn't get elected. Mr. McLaughlin here on his application that I have in my possession under FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, he wrote he's nonpartisan. 1 second later, he crosses out and writes Democratic. Usually, I think it takes at least overnight if you're going to change from a nonpartisan to Democrat, vice versa to a Republican. If you follow the policies, they got into the office by being dishonest with the voters, and now what they are actually practicing is what I call Reaganomics 101. They're running against the government because Reagan's claim to fame was the government is a dirty word, service is a dirty word, run against it. So that is what these people are doing now. There is where we have the fight. The manager resigned. We have had 3 resignations in the row. This government, Ms. McLaughlin says that he doesn't see anything because everything is open. What is at this table is in the open, but all the games which are being played behind is not in the open. I'll give you an example. For his position, which came open as the result of Jane Vogel resigning, who was going after our clerks based on fundamental religious beliefs that she did not believe a gay person should be in government, a bigoted point of view, but she would cloak it as something else. She, under pressure, finally resigned. 8 people applied. 2 of us, myself and Heather Berkowitz, who was a Jewish American lady, were the 2 minorities. Guess what did they do? In a township, which by the last census is 25% non-white, 1 out of each 4, 15% foreign born who came here became naturalized citizen, they decided to only interview 4 white Anglo-Saxons and nobody else. And so they did not even think that myself and Ms. Berkowitz were even worth the interview. He was shooed in. The day that he was appointed, he didn't even show up to accept the position. From beginning, he was a favorite of Will Hathaway because he had run on his slate. So therefore, you don't expect anything different from Mr. McLaughlin, which is the replacement of Ms. Vogel, rubber stamping everything Hathaway and the gang does to say that there's non-transparency.
Okay, next question, Jillian, this is for you. It's from Diane Benson. How would you, or how do you, prepare for voting on issues brought forward on the Board of Trustee agenda?
How do I prepare?
Yes, or how would you prepare?
Oh, I prepare now. I read through the agenda packets for all committees, Planning Commission and also the Board of Trustees. I have attended all board committee or all board meetings except for 2 in the past 4 years. Being prepared it's also about if there's an issue that has to do like let's say with the development, I read through the development packet. And then if there's anything that's a red flag, not a red flag as in there's something wrong, it's just a question, I should say, then I follow through and study and find the answer to that question. Looking at, so I guess that would be it. It's just, studying and being prepared ahead of time. And I put in a lot of hours to educate myself on the issues and also what is in front of the board.
Thank you. Okay. Another question from David Reed. What caused the recent problems with the township's tax collections? The treasurer has said that these problems will never happen again. How can the board guarantee that?
Well, it was an unfortunate error that occurred. And I think that the addition of staff would help create more processes that would allow us to have a fail-safe. We're currently in the process of interviewing a candidate for financial manager. So there is an active search underway. And I think that that would just allow us to have some more discipline in the processes that occur in financial department. And perhaps then with additional staff, we could do some double checking and make sure that we don't miss crossing any T's or dotting any I's.
Okay. Next question, and Abby, this is for you, from Diane Benson. What endorsements have you received?
Honestly, since I'm new to the game, I have not sought any endorsement from anybody because I have spent most time since I'm newcomer to township. My wife and I, we moved here in 2016. We are both immigrants. I'm Persian American. She's British and Irish American. So I'm spending most of my time studying the local issues, the national issues, because now some of those are intertwined. Although I'm very active in the Democratic Party, I'm on the friends list of our AG Attorney General Dana Nessel. I know her personally. I have worked typically on the national campaigns and the state campaigns before. This is the first time because this is my home. Scio is my home, and I saw there is so much strife going on here and so much lack of transparency and dishonesty going on that I decided to get involved. So I'm a latecomer to this. Most of my contacts are at state level, at the organization level. At the last election, for example, I was downtown in the vote center in front with the rest of other people who are trying to prevent the Proud Boys from breaking into our election headquarters to stop the count. Their mission was to stop the vote count. Our mission was to stop them from stopping the vote count, which resulted in the threats being followed and whatnot. That's a different story. As far as generally in the past, I've received, I was an organizer during the second term of President Obama in Florida. I registered with 2 other people, more than 900 people. We did caravans to take them to the polls. More than 78% of them got to vote. I have had the endorsement from the Democratic Party in Florida, in Ohio, locally in Mansfield, Ohio, which I was a poll watcher at the minority precincts, and in Michigan also. So I haven't specifically sought an endorsement for this office because I wasn't even planning for running for this office. My involvement was to try to get in and bring some degree of transparency and honesty to this government. So haven't had a chance or time to do that. And with the short time frame and so many topics to learn, I don't think I'm going to have the time to go around and seek endorsements for this office.
Oh, David Reed is well represented here. What is your position on the renewal of the conservation millage?
As a previous farmer, I am very much for conserving land, to say that. However, at this time, I do not support the millage this year. It's a 10-year millage. We still have 1 more year. And until we can get our finance department in order, we need to put aside things that we cannot manage. We need to have our finances in order, our finance department.
Okay. All right, next question. This is also from Diane Benson. She's well represented here also. And this is for you, Patrick. Describe an ethical dilemma you have faced and how did you solve it?
Interesting question. I think one of the more poignant moments in my professional career was when I was working in the aforementioned corporate communications department. And we had one of our colleagues becomes ill with AIDS. And it was really traumatic for everyone. And some people were very cautious about any kind of cooperation or communication with that person. It was real alienating for them. I was an advocate for him and brought this to the attention of my colleagues that I thought it was an unfair treatment of someone. And so I went out on a limb in one of our employee meetings and requested that he be treated fairly and that people consider the situation he was in. So I think that was an important thing to do, and hopefully it was a comfort to him before he eventually passed away.
Okay.
Okay, Abby.
Yes, sir.
From Peter Davis. What are your views on Scio becoming a charter township? Why?
Well, two schools of thoughts. We are right at general law township. Some people like that because the taxation is limited. However, Scio is becoming what I would call a pretty nice prey, meaning with our tax collections and whatnot, we are under, if somebody wants to, the threat of annexation. A general law township does not have by statute the safeguards to be prevented from being annexed into a city. For example, there was great concern that when Dexter was drawing its borders, they may want to try to take some of Scio's land. To our east is Ann Arbor. So as these people see the growth of Scio Township based on business with tax collections and stuff, this happens all the time. They may decide that, well, why not? Let us take part. No, if we were to become, and again, this is a decision that the voters need to make. I mean, but if we become a charter township, although the tax mill can go up to 5, but tax is not everything in life because the citizens can control the tax mill by voting in the people who are not overtaxed. We will have a lot greater protections against being annexed by anybody. So we have to make a decision at this point. We are not the sleepy little, Scio Township of 15 years ago. Everybody wants to move to Scio Township. Ann Arbor disbanded the dealerships except a few which were grandfathered in. Nearly all the automobile dealerships in Washington County, vast majority are on Jackson Road. We have Troma. We go all the way to Baker Road where we have the 3 truck stops and the truck wash and all of that. Ann Arbor Arms, Troma is all part of Scio Township. Well, keep in mind, that brings in a lot of tax collections and all the municipalities are now after getting a greater share of tax collections. So these are what we need to weigh, because sometimes some of our people are very focused on taxes. Even if I go to the other township, then I'm going to have higher taxes. Also by statute, if we change our township from a general township to a charter township, the township by statute is allowed to offer a lot more services. So I see the concern that I've heard from most residents is that, well, we would be giving the township board at that point the power to tax up to 5 mills versus now they are capped at around 1 mill. That's a consideration, I agree, but so do we want to lose part of our township, which is becoming more and more financially affluent, to one of the adjacent municipalities? Because if they start the annexation process, that will be much faster than us starting the process of becoming a charter township. We will lose that race. The race to the finish will not. If we want to prevent that from happening, we have to become a charter township prior to somebody to have the best chance trying to start an annexation.
Okay, next question is for Jillian. It's from Mike Janizeko. Mike asks, there has been a group of residents who are very active and confrontational, perhaps justifiable, and a recall attempt on a few board members. What specific steps will you take to reduce the tensions with both this group of residents and the members of the Scio Township government?
I'm assuming he means if I'm on the board. Okay. Well, the issues with the residents, they're not issues. They're voicing their frustrations, the problems that they have been facing, that when they speak, it falls on deaf ears. It's really a matter of working together. And as a board member, if I am chosen to be on the board, I would do my best to find a win-win and work with others that are willing. Of course, I cannot make anybody do anything, but I can only present solutions. I can present an ear for residents to voice to, and to help them find issues or find answers to their issues. This is nothing that I haven't been doing in the past 4 years, helping residents. Now, when it comes to the board members, bottom line is we're here to serve the community. We're here to serve residents. We were elected because of residents. They put their trust in us and we are here to serve them. We're not here to serve our personal agendas, our ideas, and then if anybody says, I have a problem with that, to ignore them. That's the real issue here. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, from Jonathan Greenberg. I've noticed many of the current BOT members show up late and/or are uninformed. What preparation will or would you do prior to a meeting?
Well, I certainly try to be punctual and arrive at meetings on time. I prepare by reviewing the agenda packet and reviewing the material on the agenda. That typically is posted on Thursday prior to the Tuesday board meetings. So you have an opportunity typically to look at that over the weekend. And I think attendance is very important. And as far as I can tell, I would think that board members are well informed. I've not really noticed any people that are unaware of the issues on the table. You know, you review all the items in the consent agenda, and then we typically move forward on that and reach an agreement, a consensus decision the majority of the time. So I think attendance can be a problem, but personally, it's not something that affects me because I'm typically here.
Okay. Abby, this question's for you.
Thank you.
And it's from Kathleen Brandt.
Looks like a long one.
It is a long one. Scio Township uses a process called Special Assessment District, or SAD, SAD, to allow for road improvement for residential streets. The residents of a specific special assessment district pay 100% of the cost for improvements in their special assessment district. The Board of Trustees budgeted to pay a portion of the cost to pave Dino Drive, or Dino Drive, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Do you think Scio taxpayers should pay for roads which are fully populated by businesses? And the clarification, is it fair that the DDA has approved 50% of the funds for Dino Drive? The board has budgeted the other 50% for paving, which comes from resident tax dollars.
So there are some roads which are used jointly by businesses as well as residents. We, I guess, have to sit down and come up with a plan which is fair to the residents. In other words, if it is a road which is highly used by businesses more so than the residents, then I don't think the burden or the majority burden of that should be put on the shoulders of the residents. I believe, although we all live in Scio Township, we benefit, and this is a hard balance because businesses here, we cannot just feel disassociated from them because their existence and their contribution to the tax code keeps our taxes low. We are lucky in Scio Township to have Ann Arbor schools, Ann Arbor address, and much lower taxes than Ann Arbor. However, I do understand that we all feel that, you know, we don't want to pay for anything unless we are getting direct benefits from it. And if the business is getting direct benefit, why should I pay for it? But you got to look at the indirect benefit also. It's a topic which is going to require some studying, but I will just leave you with this idea that we all share. Sometimes I contribute more, I get less, or sometimes I contribute less, I get more. I give you, and I think we should model that, the quote of what President Kennedy said: ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So I invite everybody, this will require a board which can put together a group of people who can study this and have a mix of business reps and a mix of the citizens of Scio Township to sit down and moderate this and come up with a solution which would not alienate the businesses from leaving, it would not alienate the citizens from thinking that they're overpaying. And right now, I mean, to be able to give you that division, that portion from the top of my head, I can't. But I can tell you that the framework, what I would do is that I would set up a commission or something like that. I would invite members of the public and members of the business, and I would also bring in some professionals so we could do a study of what is fair, how should we do this, who should pay for the SADs, should it be paid by 100% for the people who live on that road, or should a portion be paid by the other people because the benefits are crossover? Because we can think of every district gives the most benefit to the people who live in that district. But I do travel all the roads of Scio Township. So although I use the roads closest to my district the most, but I use the other roads. Is that 30 seconds? Okay, the other roads. So that is what I propose, how I propose to solve it, by having a problem-solving point of view, which is lacking on this board right now. Our problem, many of our problems are the offshoot of the current supervisor, Will Hathaway, and his gang, who always vote in lockstep with each other. That's why I call him puppet master, not the supervisor. Because everybody is rubber stamping what he says.
Okay, again for you, Jillian. And again, David Reed. Do you feel the stretch of Zeeb Road between, I think it means I-94 and Pratt Road should be widened? If so, how should it be funded?
Zeeb Road between 94 and Pratt widened. At this time, I do not see a need to widen that. I believe that there would only be one reason that I can think of to widen that road, and that would be condensed development. And there's only one spot for condensed development that I know of, and that's over on the east side of Zeeb and 94, and then possibly behind the road commission. But at this point, no. And if it is to be widened, we have to see what the reason is, and if it is development, then the developer should pay for it. Now, of course, the township is involved, and then that's also a county road, so the county possibly should be contributing as well. Thank you.
All right, we're back to a question for Patrick, and this is from Caroline Altamir. In order for us to get a picture of your history of involvement with the township, please tell us all your experiences of involvement with the township and be as detailed as possible. This includes how often you've attended board meetings prior to serving, what committees you've served on, and how often you attend other meetings.
Well, I have served on the Parks Advisory Board from 2018 till earlier this year, when I was appointed to the board. I have, prior to becoming a board member, I would view the meetings via Zoom. Did that several times, although I must admit that I didn't always extend myself all the way to the end because they sometimes got quite lengthy. And in terms of meetings, I attend as many as possible. You know, we just had the Pros Plan open house here, which I participated in. There are other opportunities for meetings as well, and I avail myself of those when I can. And I believe I have not missed any of the board meetings at all. So, and while I'm on the board meeting attendance, one of the things that I should have mentioned previously when I was asked about absences at the board meeting is that I think we need to be respectful of people when they have family health emergencies, which is why one of the current trustees has been absent several times recently.
Abby from Hob Calhoun. Over the last 7 years, Scio Township has spent millage monies matched with Ann Arbor Greenbelt monies, as well as Washtenaw County funds and state funds to protect and purchase outright several properties now owned and managed by Scio Township. 5 of these properties are now open to the public for hiking, nature photography, birding, and other recreational activities. In your mind, what is the importance of these efforts, and what is your vision for the township for the future along these lines?
I believe it is very important because Scio Township, we want to keep the character of the rural character as well as not in some corridors the business character. So I would completely support all the efforts of getting funds from any source, federal, state, city of Ann Arbor, trying to match it as best as we can to be able to buy more of the land to keep it in the form of a rural. Because although I do like development, I do like progress, I don't want to become New York City either, that every piece of land is developed and there is no green space left, there is no farm left. So I think everybody moved to this area because we all want to have some elbow room. We don't want to be saturated in a dense area. We want to, it's a mix. We want to have a good tax basis of low taxes. We want to have good schools. We have all of those because The fact that there is corridors of business like Jackson Road, which is very busy, there is many parts of the side that you're driving, which looks very rural. Right down, Zeep Road and whatnot. And that's a great benefit for the quality of life of the residents. So I would encourage going after every single fund, whether it's state of Michigan, whether it's federal, whether it's local cities and stuff like that, and adding and working to add to more of the green belt of ours to preserve more properties, try to keep them in the motive, because a lot of these properties are also working toward the filtration of the air. The more dense we develop, the more residents we have, so you have all these roofs with all these cooktops and stuff like that. People are using a lot of high energy that's putting a lot of pollutants in the air. So that gets offset by having farmland and by having trees and preserving them and whatnot. So to me, that's a great deal of importance for people who live here. And my vision is that I want to do a lot more of it. I want to preserve more land than the current percentage. Again, I'm a small business owner. I want to be friendly to business, but I want to have a balance in life because after all, we live here, it's our home. So my number one fundamental concern is what is the quality of life for the residents and citizens of Scio Township. I welcome businesses in here, not for us to serve the businesses, for the businesses to serve the citizens of Scio Township. So hence with that, I would, again, commission a group of citizens and professionals and do a study and see what other monies are there and how we can even preserve more land. Again, which brings us back to the leadership on the board, which currently, unfortunately, is non-existent.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Jillian, and this is from Peter Davis. Are you in favor of hiring local lawyers instead of going out of the county?
Absolutely. I am in full support of supporting local. I mean, in our community, beginning with Scio Township. Now, of course, this is just a very general, we can't say, okay, we're gonna hire a lawyer, an attorney here just because they live in Scio. If they have to be qualified, they have to be very informed about the issue. We have, I don't know how many attorneys we have for our township, I believe at least 6. But to search for an attorney to give us an answer that we want to hear or is not, yeah, of course, they can sit in a board meeting, they can study and just kind of have a general idea, but somebody that lives in our community has more of a vested interest, not just for being hired, but also for the betterment of our community.
Question from Peter Davis. Patrick, are you aware of a hostile workplace environment at Township Hall? If so, how do you believe it developed and what ideas do you have to fix it?
I think anyone who watches the board meetings understands that there's tension among people here in the hall. And I think in any organization, there's going to be strong-willed individuals that have different opinions. I think the important thing to remember about being professional and being accommodating and collaborative is that we don't take things out and make them personal in nature, but we talk about the policies involved. We talk about arriving at a solution and reaching a consensus. I think that it's really an important thing for everyone in the township who obviously all have the same objective to run things efficiently, make sure that essential services are delivered to the residents, and make prudent use of our tax dollars. So we all want to achieve the same thing, but there are differences of opinions about how to arrive at that solution. But I would encourage, and hopefully I can present myself as a moderating influence, and I'd like to think that we can lower the temperature of some of these board meetings because they do become quite contentious when they become very personal. And that's been a bit of a surprise to me that they are as rancorous as they are at times.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This will be for Abby, and this is from Marcy. How do you intend to bring cohesiveness and collaboration back to the board and regain the trust of Scio citizens?
Actually, that's up to the voters. You were misled in the last election by a group of people who claimed to be Democrats. They were not. They literally lied to the voters. It is not correct to lie to the voters because you just want to get elected. Scio Township is a progressive township. That means they want progressive people to run. I have given them this example multiple times. That would be as bad as me going to West Bloomfield, Michigan, pretending to be very right-wing conservative Republican just to get on the board and get elected. The residents of each area have a right to vote for the people who truly are who they want them to be. When we have a treasurer, when we have Mr. McLaughlin, and neither one of them are Democrats, you can ask them about the history of Democratic Party, about the democratic policies, what do the Democrats stand for, what is the difference between the Republican and Democrats, and so on. They won't be able to tell you even in minutia. So when we talk about lowering the temperature, we are here not as a debating society. We are here to get the business of the citizens of Scio Township done. Citizens of Scio Township thought collectively they were voting in a bunch of Democrats. Will Hathaway, unfortunately, that I call him Trump Jr., the same as Donald Trump, thinks that instead of him being elected to serve the citizens of Scio Township, every apparatus of the government is here to serve him. Doesn't that remind you of somebody who not too long ago gassed a bunch of people out of a park to go stand next to a church and hold the Bible upside down? Every apparatus of the government in Washington, D.C., according to Donald Trump, was there to serve him, not him to serve the people. Well, Mr. Hathaway is only contained and his gang by one thing, the limitation of his office. If he's advanced to any higher office, he'll use every inch of every power which is given. Part of having the power is to have the wisdom to know when not to use it. He braided our manager, who was a very good neutral guy, so many times in public that the guy resigned and he went through the steps, somebody who was lifetime servant of reading a resignation letter in the open to the citizens of Scio Township. We have had 3 resignations in the award. And then Mr. McLaughlin talks about, oh, well, we're going to lower the temperature by trying to be more cohesive. Well, how can you lower the temperature when you are one of the people who's voting in a block with Will Hathaway, lockstep rubber stamp since you got elected to this board? How can you lower the temperature when you know that the whole process of putting you in place was a corrupt process, that they didn't even interview 4 people who had, who had put in their applications? Multiple times I've asked him, do you want to be profiling courage and tell to the board that because you didn't interview all the 8 candidates, I'm going to reject this office until you guys do another interview of everybody? Thank you.
Okay, Jillian again from Marcy, no last name. What have you done to show support for the residents of Scio to convince us you have the best interest at heart? Please be specific.
Specific? I only have 3 minutes.
2 minutes.
Well, for the past 4 years, when I began with voicing regarding the processes of the garbage service, residents started contacting me with their personal issues, not husband and wife issues, but their neighborhood issues, so to speak. And I'm trying to think of the very first one. There's been so many. Well, I would have a conversation with them, and based on my past experience with when I purchased my house, there was a non-disclosure issue, a large flooding issue, and it took me 3 years to work with the county, my neighborhood, and not really the township. They didn't help, wouldn't help. So I went through that process on my own, and I felt very alone and unsupported. I'm raising 3 daughters, self-employed and whatnot. So after that, as I got involved in the township and I saw residents having similar issues, and it's really hard to know what to do. So I would either reach out to them or they reached out to me. And I would say, this is what I did. You start with doing a little bit of education, and this is where I went. Maybe that you'll have some answers there. So one of the examples recently is the Railroad Street SAD process. And that was unbelievably irresponsible of the people representing the township that were involved. There was a lot of just behind the scenes, there was residents that were kept in the dark. So when I talked with these residents, we started educating ourselves on statute, Public Act 188, and how the process was supposed to be done. It was not. So and then we started reaching out to others outside of the township. We weren't getting answers from inside the township, reached out outside of the township, and these are people that have been doing special assessments for 30, 40 years. So we were able to come up with a process. And then also, my big thing is Railroad Street, SAD, you're having an issue here. Over here on, let's say, Zeeb Road, you're having an issue. We're all residents. If you're having an issue and somebody else is having an issue, why aren't we working together and creating the community that we want? So I guess the Railroad Street is the best example recently. There's another one. I want to read back at you. It's just a habit. So another one is there is a private road variance in this neighborhood. And speaking of being prepared, I read through that on paper and I'm like, hey, this looks like a pretty good idea. You know, everything. But I was invited to go out and walk it. It was terrible. What was on paper did not match that area. So again, we had some resident meetings, a couple of them, and I said, this is, here's different places to look to find information.
Okay, next question for Patrick. This is from David Reed. Should the public be allowed to submit letters to the township's newsletter? Should they be published unedited, assuming no inappropriate language is per guidelines?
Well, I can see where that would expand the newsletter a great deal if there were many different correspondence received. And there's a public record of all of the correspondence received by the board that is posted in the agenda. So that's all on record if someone wants to communicate that. So I don't see the necessity for including individual letters in the newsletter, frankly. And I agree with Mary Gillis that the newsletter should be an opportunity for us to talk about what's good about Scio Township, why it's a desirable township to move into, to consider for a business or a family. And I can see where, much like comments online, if you recall, they tend to skew negative. And I would hate to see the newsletter be something that would be considered detrimental to the character of the township. So no, I wouldn't support that.
Okay.
Okay, for you, Abby, from Ryan Yapple. How will you, as future trustee, ensure that the township's spending is kept fiscally responsible?
By studying the issues that we vote on, making sure that the projects that we add are projects of necessity, keeping in mind the balance between the growth of Scio Township and its existence, by not overspending, but not underspending. You have to do the correct amount by getting assistance from the professionals when it needed. Again, we are lacking on the board. Our numbers on the board, the support staff on the board is something which would equate to 15 years ago. When the manager, the last manager who resigned, had interviewed with all the township, employees, a number from 2 to 20 was given that we need to add that many to be able to catch up. Now, as he said, 2 was too low, 20 was too high. One of the problems that we are having is that, for example, the finance department is not the only department which is understaffed. We have many departments which are understaffed. The fire department is understaffed. It's underfunded. It's on the location, frankly. It doesn't have enough locations. Scio is a large township. This location doesn't serve, the far corners of it. And, our chief, which is a really good guy, Andy Hood, has repeatedly brought those numbers. We are about number 6, which is the middle of the road when we are rated based on the response of all the fire departments. So I do believe in fiscal responsibility, but I also do believe in service. There is a difference between the democratic point of view and the other points of, where we believe the government can be a catalyst for good, where we believe that when the middle class and lower class, unlike the rich class, don't have access to the funds, they can collectively get together and do something great. Where we believe prior to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, there was no middle class in this country. This country was the same as any other country, small rich class, large poor class. What made us distinguishable was the fact that you had a large middle class by creation of Medicare, for example. Prior to that, only 5% of the senior citizens could afford private insurance because as your age goes up, you get sick and they charge more. Seniors were dying 8.5 years earlier than they should. For example, Medicare came as a government insurance. Its mandate was to break even and cover as many people as it could. Medicaid for the poor people. Social Security was supposed to be one of the 3 legs of the retirement with dignity, living wages and whatnot. So what I would do in that process is that I would create a balance between what is good for the township, what's good for the citizens, but I also would not be willy-nilly with their numbers. And again, my background, having 2 degrees, one of them being economics, I'm a numbers man, and the other one being political science. I know about the government and my affiliations with the groups in the past, and what I have done shows that. So I would pull together a group from Scio of the professional citizen residents to do a study and implement this program.
Next question, and Jillian, this is for you. It's from Mike Janzeko, and he says in the July newsletter, it mentioned that we have a general fund surplus over $7 million. What specifically will you do to keep the surplus?
Well, the general fund, there are restricted and unrestricted funds in there. So the restricted would be something such as special assessments. Let's say that would be a restricted, or the fire department would be restricted. Then we have unrestricted. So those unrestricted can, by board approval, be spent on whatever comes up, I guess, and we don't want to, use it for whatever comes up. This is where the budget is very important. That budget, that our fiscal year ends on March 31st and begins on April 1st. So from what our budget has been, it seems, I'm trying to remember the past couple of years, even before, that we have to begin looking at our budget way before, let's say, February. So even starting in December or November, start looking at that budget and making sure that everything is covered. Of course, we're going to have unexpected expenses. It could be, I don't know, it could be an extra, there's some road work that it needs to be done and we didn't calculate that because it was an emergency. But they're really based on past history. We should be able to kind of see into the future what we're going to need. Capital management or capital improvement is very important. We know our culverts are going to be breaking down. We know our building's going to be breaking down and especially if we don't take care of it. So we need to plan accordingly and make sure that we're taking care of what's most important. So in the long run, we're not dipping into the general fund and we're not raising taxes because we ignored something that should have been maintained all along.
All right, Patrick, for you, Bonnie G. A number of financial missteps have plagued the board recently and have caused residents to lose faith in the accuracy of the board's financial records. Would you support a forensic audit of the township's books in order to restore public confidence?
I think that we can restore public confidence by hiring a finance director, which we're currently in the process of doing. There's interviews underway. I don't see any need personally for forensic audit, because I would prefer to look forward and instead of looking backward. I think it would be an unnecessary expense. I think that the staff that we have working here have a legacy of being honest brokers and being efficient. And there have been a couple of problems recently, but I don't think that that would warrant the necessity for having a forensic audit. I would not think it's a good use of our taxpayer dollars.
Okay, next question for you, Abby. It's from Bonnie G. She asks, the township board has seen increased acrimony since the last election. How do you plan to heal the divisions and restore competent government?
By working with the voters to actually usher in a new group of elected officials who don't lie to the citizens, who don't pretend that they're Democrats when they are not, who don't go on writing they're a Democrat because they know if they don't write that they're not going to get elected. I believe honesty is the number one and the most important thing between the elected officials and the citizenry. I believe you as citizens have the right to know the history of all of us, what we believe, what's in our heart, and how we are going to implement those policies. The disconnect that you have, the acrimony that you have on the board is as the result of the people in the last election who claimed they were Democrats, including starting with the supervisor, but they did not believe in democratic policies. Once they got in through the door, they started implementing actually conservative Republican philosophies. They don't want to spend any money whatsoever to expand the size of the government. We talked about this. Theodore Roosevelt, FDR, and many of the other presidents, John F. Kennedy, they believed in a larger government because automatically the middle class and lower class are handicapped more so than the rich class because of their access to the funds and to the treasury is less, but collectively they can accomplish things. So I believe, although we don't want to have an overinflated government, but we do need to add the staff. The staff right now is commensurate with the township, which was much smaller economically, population-wise, and whatnot. But that requires the people who believe in a certain ideas. That's why I encourage you to, if you'll start first of all with this trustee, but this is not the end of it. If I am lucky enough to get your vote to come in, I intend to work with everybody where I can. I intend to oppose the non-democratic philosophies and the tyrannic way that the board is being run every time, at every turn. I intend to want to make sure that everybody is treated with respect and equality, that somebody doesn't go after our clerk as an example, just because of her gender identity. That is not fair. You know, I often tell to the friends, don't throw a stone if you live in a glass house. We are lucky in this country, which we don't have an state religion. There are people who want to create their set of morality and force that as an state religion. Let me say this to you, as somebody who came from a country who adopted an state religion, the problem becomes that that segment of the religion then believes that everything they say comes from God Almighty, that anybody who disagrees with them then is wrong. We have separation of church and state, and we have certain democratic philosophies. As Democrats, we believe in equality of justice. We believe in a living wage for everybody. We believe in retirement with dignity and so
on. Again, question from Hob Calhoun. Leadership position for Parks and Pathways was approved by the Board of Trustees last Tuesday. What is the importance of Scio Parks and Pathways program, and how does Parks and Pathways millage play into the health and breadth of this program, Jillian?
Could you repeat the last part of that, please?
Yes. What is the importance of Parks and Pathways program, and how does the Parks and Pathways millage play into the health and breadth of this program?
Well, the Parks and Pathways millage, I'm going to begin with that. As we know, was passed in, I believe, November 2019, 2020. I was there at the board meeting when they did their presentation. And of course, that money should be used for Parks and Pathways. And I see, and I'm going to go off a little bit on the side here, there's other places where money is being taken and put into the Parks and Pathways. I'll leave it at that. So the Parks and Pathways are important, but something that is a want and not a need. And right now, we need to have our township, the basic foundation of our township government in working order because that's our basic needs. And then all wants, just like you have a home, you need to take care of your home first. You need to make sure the finances are there, and then you take care of the yard. Well, okay, I guess I love my yard, so, but coming back to wants versus needs. So I do believe that the Parks and Pathways millage is important. It was passed by voters. But we tend to be focused on the outside more than the inside. And we need to have a nice balance that should complement a strong foundation so we can support these programs in the future.
Okay. Next question from Jan Culbertson. Community engagement is vital to democracy, yet Scio does not have an ongoing communication framework within the township. Is this important to you? How would you improve the community engagement across the township?
Thank you for that question, Jan. I agree that community engagement's really important. I was a little dismayed to see at the pros plan open house that it wasn't well attended, and I think that was sort of a failure on our part to not do a better job of getting the communication out there that there was an event that everybody was invited to attend. I think perhaps we could have a more robust website presence. Maybe that would help. You know, the newsletter is always a source of information regarding what ongoing activities are there and available. And obviously, all of the, you know, we have several really committed citizens, including my opponents at this table, that attend most every activity that I can think of. So they're aware of it because there's a schedule that's on the website. And those are all opportunities that are available for people to participate in. So perhaps we could do a better job of getting the word out, and we should. But I do agree that community involvement is essential in a working democracy.
What's yours?
Okay, Abby from Liz Wiseman. What would you change in BOT meetings to encourage respectful exchanges of views rather than the acrimony and personal attacks that have characterized some meetings during the past year?
To start with, in a long term, I would change the Will Hathaway's position, but that's up to you voters. If you want problems solved, you have to elect different people, because you're not going to get the same thing. It's just like cooking food. Let me give you a simple example. Depending on what ingredients you put in the food is going to come out tasting a certain way. The ingredient that you have right now is somebody who, as supervisor, believes his number one is that he doesn't want to be diminished. I've had that conversation with him. What do you mean you don't want to be diminished? I've told him, Will, if you act like a gentleman, if you are here to serve everybody who has either voted for you and not, then you're not going to be diminished. That's what's in your mind. But when, for example, many times I call him to have a discussion with him and he literally slams the phone down, that does not promote goodwill with the township's citizens. That was my introduction to Mr. Hathaway, because I had an issue with zippy auto wash ejection pumps coming very early in the morning and making so much noise in my neighborhood that was like a small earthquake, that everybody was jumping off. The kids were waking up. So I tried to work with him to get them, can you get them to come at 8 o'clock? It's bad enough that you guys allowed that car wash, you didn't do enough study to go right in front of nearly 100-something residential units behind it. At least ask them not to come with these large sewage ejection trucks. And the response was because we didn't see eye to eye. He slammed the phone down. The next time I told him, you are not a, leader of a private equity firm that you think that you have the prerogative to pick and choose who you talk to and who you listen to. You are an elected official. We, the public, are your boss, which was very foreign to his ears. No, he feels that, honestly, I'm not being sexual, but both Donald Trump and Will Hathaway are the top personalities. When they look in the mirror, they see a crown on their head and a scepter under their arm. They think they're royalty and everybody else is here to serve them. And that's why we have this contention. Contention is truly because of it's not just because of the difference of, that I believe it's because of the difference of priorities and principles and philosophies. They have got in here behind this table by claiming that they were going to espouse democratic philosophies in a township, which is a progressive township. Once they got in, they reverted to their true nature. Now that they have the power, they are doing everything which is against what we told people of Scio Township they were going to do. So in order to lessen the acrimony, I will work with them where I can, but I will oppose them at every turn in the short term for what they are doing, which is non-democratic. And hopefully then we can get more partnership, more citizenry to get involved and actually ask more questions and get the Democrats in office.
Okay, next question for Jillian, and this is from Diane Benson. What distinguishes you from the other candidates?
That's interesting. What distinguishes me? Well, as I said before, for the past 4 years, I've been heavily involved in the township, not just with residents, but also with everything that has come up that has, well, I shouldn't say is an issue, because I am a type of person that I question everything, so I want answers. So I have studied everything that has come in front of me. I spend at least 20 hours a week on township issues, or township subjects. Let's call them subjects, because we don't really need to create them as issues or look at them as issues. They are something that we just need to work with for the betterment of the community. So another, regarding my education, educating myself on the subjects and statutes and whatnot, policies and procedures, I am actively involved with residents. Yesterday, everybody knows that there's a campaign going on and it's a really hard thing. And I'm getting text messages and phone calls from residents that need some help, that need, it could just be a simple answer, but I'm always there to answer. It may not be right away, but I do get back to them. So it's resident engagement that makes me different. I have had a lot of different types of experiences regarding being self-employed, farming, 3 daughters. Anybody that has teenage daughters knows what I'm talking about. Even in my neighborhood, just reaching out to my neighbors and helping them. Not all of them, I will admit, but some of them, and that I keep an eye on. I have elderly neighbors. There's disabled people in my neighborhood that I keep an eye on, and I also drop off goodies to them during the holidays. But so this is where I'm different, because I am actively involved with not just going to meetings, but I am involved with residents. And I go out and I visit them, and I listen to them, and we go through whatever their problem is, if it is a problem. Thank you.
Okay, another question from Diane Benson. Patrick, give us a concrete example of how you have personally assisted residents with their issues.
Well, I guess my service on the Parks Department might be the best example for me to show. I've not been requested by any specific individual to solve a problem that they may be having with the township. So my answer would be that my support of the community has been primarily up to this point relative to the parks and making sure that they're available and safe. But again, I have the opportunity as a board member to vote on some of the things that are coming up where citizens have, expressed interest in, limiting development, and those are things that I have to take into consideration very carefully, because property developers have the right to develop their property according to our statutes and laws. But neighbors that are adversely affected by that, it could create a problem. So when we're presented with those kind of dilemmas, it's really important to educate yourself and make sure that you arrive at a compromise that satisfies everyone.
Next question for Abby. This is from Peter Davis. Are you in favor of hiring law firms and other professionals on a competitive basis by inviting sealed bids and hiring only the lowest qualified bidder?
Yes and no. I'm in favor of first identifying the most qualified attorneys who are the most knowledgeable in municipal laws, because sometimes the lowest bid in the long run ends up being the most expensive bid because you get into a lot of problem with lawsuits. Once we identify, for the sake of argument, 5 or 6 equally qualified law firms, and I would give the deference to the local law firms in Washington County, begin there. Then I would invite a sealed bid from those law firms. But at the beginning of process, I would identify the law firms based on their ability to represent the municipalities and their knowledge. Once that identification is done, then I will go to those law firms and see how many of them, if any, are interested in actually sending us a bid for the volume of services that we are providing. And then, of course, those bids would be a seal, but I wouldn't want to know the other ones, so they would go and undercut the one law firm by $10 per hour just to get the job. So that would be the fair way of doing it. All equals in ability and all equals in submitting the bids, which would be a seal bid. Then that would give us the result of having basically dealt with both aspects, the talent and the economical, philosophy of it. And that's what distinguishes me, without diminishing anybody else, me from the rest. Because one, with political science, I understand the forms of the government in general and specific. Second, with economics degree, I understand that everything has a number component, that we have to be realistic, but we can put those numbers to where it does the most for the most number of the citizens in the township. And I would have the most transparency, because I truly believe that in some cases it's best to wash your dirty laundry in public. You want to hear from every citizen possible. You want people to feel they are included. As an example, I will just leave you with this. They have heard me say many times, Scio Township, as of last census, is 25% non-white. I talk to these people, none of them think this government does anything for them. They look at all the boards. Every single board, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 token, Gus on the DDA and stuff like that, is appointed white Anglo-Saxon. What does that do? That makes a quarter of your community feel they are not included in anything, because they don't even see one person like that. Same with the LGBT community. They see how the one which is on the board is being treated, how the people are going after her for no reason. Jane Vogel was clearly going after her only, I know that for a fact, because of her sexual identity, but she was cloaking it as something else. Well, that doesn't warm the heart of any minority. From my point of view, discrimination against one is discrimination against all.
Jillian, from David Reed. I should say, David Reed and I are friends, but not co-conspirators in all the What is your position on making Scio Township a charter township? It's for you, Jillian.
Oh, we're going to give it to him. You looked at him. I am against it. And the reasons why are, well, a general law township is the very basic form of government. And right now we're having a hard time managing the general law township internally. So going to a charter township, yes, it was mentioned about protection from annexation. Scio Township is not under threat of annexation. Ann Arbor, we have an agreement with Ann Arbor that there's some island in they call them island township, I guess, and they're spotted throughout Ann Arbor, not throughout, but around the western part. So there is an agreement that those will be annexed, and it does take a long process. They're still doing that. As far as the only other thing I know regarding the threat of annexation is if the Gelman dioxane plume infiltrates a lot of, now I have to, it's from like in the 1960s or 70s, But if the plume infiltrates many wells on the east side of Wagner, just as it did in the little Sister Lake neighborhood, they will be annexed. Dexter actually annexed itself away from us. So they're not saying that we want more of Scio. So another issue with going to charter township is that it's a minimum of 5 mills. So right now, in a general law, we have 1 mill, that's what we pay. But with the SADs and whatnot, we're actually paying almost 5 mills. So with the charter township, minimum of 5 mills going up to even, I believe up to 10 mills. Is that what we really want? Yes, we may want the extra benefits, but at the expense of what? Right now, we're in an economic downturn and it's not going to get any better soon. So do we really want our taxes to go up? So I suggest that we start looking at the issues that we have right now, and that is in Township Hall and getting our ducks in order, so to speak. We'll use it because we're semi-rural. So this is where we need to, if we cannot manage what we have right now, how are we going to manage more millages? The other thing with the charter township is that it takes away power from the people. Not as much as if we went to a city, but the board gets more power. They can make decisions without residents' input. We can talk about it. We can, give our input, but they don't have to follow it. They can make their own decisions. Do we really want this at that time? Thank you.
All right, next question for Patrick. This is from Jan Culbertson. Washtenaw County has committed to achieving carbon neutrality for operations by 2030 and community-wide by 2035. Ann Arbor has committed to both by 2030. Scio Township launched their environmental sustainability task force almost a year ago and is proposing goals in line with the county. Are you in support of these goals? What leadership will you bring to this effort?
I think sustainability and climate change are an existential question that the importance of which cannot be minimized. I'm totally in support of attempting to reach those goals. And I'm particularly pleased to see that the Environmental Sustainability Task Force is working with University of Michigan students that are involved with the School of Environment and Sustainability to create an action plan for the township, the very first action plan we've ever had when it comes to climate, that would help us achieve those goals and give us some ideas. And part of that outreach has consisted of speaking to different organizations. I did participate in a survey, an interview with one of the students, which I found very illuminating and inspirational in a lot of ways. And I think there are a lot of things that we can do to help achieve that goal of carbon neutrality. I think there's going to be challenges associated with that. It's not going to be easy. I thought of that when I was at the fire burning, and I was looking at those big fire trucks thinking, these things aren't going to run on batteries, So I think there's going to be challenges to meet those goals, but I think they're important things for us all to do. And I saw some recommendation recently that someone suggested that there should be solar panels on the roof of Township Hall to encourage people to consider that as a viable option. I agree that would make sense and certainly contribute to reducing our carbon footprint.
Okay, another question for you, Abby, from Kathleen Knoll. What is the #1 issue currently facing township residents, in your opinion?
Government dishonesty. In all honesty, it comes back to that because, we elect a group of people to do the business of the citizens. This time, unfortunately, the same as the last national election, by whatever happened, somebody with the name Donald Trump got into presidency, which we ended up with the January 6th attack on the United States Congress, which had not happened since The British were here. It literally ended up with people attacking the Congress of the United States, calling for the vice president to be hung. They erected gallows in front, and for the Speaker of the House to be shot, Nancy Pelosi. So that's where we end up with bad leadership. So locally, the offices here don't have that kind of a national power. But our supervisor and the group which vote in lockstep with him, the number one priority for him is that he doesn't want to be diminished. And that is defined as, if you disagree with anything I say, I'm diminished. Therefore, I'm going to use every ounce of the power that my office has to overcome the citizens of Scio Township. There are some good people on the township board, a couple of them, 2, 3 of them, who fight, but they're a minority. The vote is always with the clique of the supervisor, which includes Mr. McLaughlin. 100% rubber stamp, same as Jane Vogel. So when the people come in with an agenda, you cannot put Republicans and Democrats in the same office and expect the same, as an example, the same policies and philosophies. Different points of view have different policies and philosophies that they implement. Scio Township thought, and there is a reason why they are run as Democrats, that they were electing Democrats. But I will tell you, a bunch of them are not. But they knew to have the best chance of winning in Scio Township, which is a progressive township, is to claim they're Democrats. In their heart, there was something else. So now that they are here and they passed over the bridge, they have reverted back to implementing Reaganomics 101, running against the government, fighting about expanding, enlarging the size of anything having to do with government, getting in fight with the manager who was a person of goodwill, to the point that he resigns. We keep losing staff, qualified staff after qualified staff at this township. So, these are the problems. The problem starts that the people have the power of vote. The power is in your hand. Vote for whom you think is going to represent the best thing that you believe in. Don't listen to the labels.
Thank you. So now begins our last 5 minutes where the candidates get 5 minutes to speak. And I want to thank you all so far. This has been really, really good. So Patrick, if you would like to begin your 5-minute time frame. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Pam, for organizing this event. I want to thank the volunteers that are participating in it as well. And I also want to commend my opponents, Abby and Gillian. I think this has been a very interesting experiment, and I've enjoyed hearing your comments. And I certainly respect and admire your zeal and commitment and opportunity to serve, and I think it's commendable. One of the things that I would like to think that I can bring to the board is more of a positive tone. It's been touched on by several of the questions we've heard tonight, this morning. And I try to avoid contributing to the negativity. I'd like to think that I'm a positive person, optimistic in that regard. It was rather concerning for me to recently have been part of a lawsuit that was extended by the clerk against the board. And I found that to be really unnecessary. And I think it's an embarrassing mark against our township. It certainly puts us in a bad light, I think. In addition to that, at one of the meetings, frequently we hear comments that are outrageous and untrue and seemingly designed to shock. And some examples I can think of meetings that I attended were people saying things like, we're going to go bankrupt. Nobody's going to want to work with us. We're not going to be able to pay our vendors. We don't have the expertise in-house to manage grants from the state. And are any of those comments accurate? No, they're not.
They are. Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
So I think that having a lawsuit against other board members isn't really contributing to creating a conducive, collaborative environment. It makes it difficult to work together. It's divisive. And I was hoping to go my entire life without being the victim of a lawsuit, but unfortunately I am now. So what is it that I do support? What is it that I feel is important for the township? I support the Parks and Pathways millage. I think that we have 4 parks that have just been opened up that have parking facilities there that allow people to take walks and get outside and enjoy our landscape. I support the land preservation millage. There's never been any hint of that being improperly managed. I don't see any reason to put a moratorium on the millage. I think it's one of the real success stories for our township. Since 2004, when it was implemented, we now have preserved over 1,700 acres in our township of farmland, green space, and forests. That's about 12% of the entire landmass of Scio Township. In addition to that, I support the private-public partnership that most recently was illustrated by the Woodland Commons PUD, which we just supported in our last meeting. It's a wonderful example of a developer accommodating requests to conserve natural features. And in this case, it was the heron rookery. They actually changed their initial plans, moved farther away to create a larger buffer zone. I also support having adequate staff internally so that we can deliver essential services efficiently. I think that's just one of the primary concerns that we should have. And as I've been out campaigning and explaining to people that I'm running for the board, people say, why were you doing that? You know, that's crazy there. Well, I stepped forward because I think I have something to offer and I want to contribute back to the township in which I live. And some people, when they see Scio Township, they think dysfunction. I look at it and say progress.
Is that 5 minutes?
Going fast.
It does.
Time flies. Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead, Abby. It's your time for the.
So I believe what I have to contribute is a passion for our form of government, which is supposed to be a representative type of government. I have turned a very bad childhood experience of having to leave my home country and losing family members into a positive point of view of adopting my new home country. And those of us who made it here alive, and I mean underline alive, literally, alive, we are grateful for the liberties and whatnot that this country has to offer. I greatly appreciate the fact that we have 3 co-equal branches of the government, which all have got rights, that we don't have one segment of the government being able to run roughshod, like you do in many other countries. There is countries that they call, like China, President Xi calls himself president for life. That's just a label. There's no such thing as president for life. This country started as an ideal, allegiance to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, with no strong man, the man changing every 4 or 8 years, that we are up to live to the idea of being a shining example to the world and to ourselves. The way we can become that shining example to those, take the beautiful words in the Constitution and Bill of Rights and make sure from the national to the local level, they extend equally to everybody in the country, regardless of their race, gender identity, color of skin and background. As Dr. Martin Luther King says, it should be the content of character, not the color of the skin. My main thing, my passion has always been enlarging the size of the electorate. That's why I acted as a poll watcher in some of the toughest neighborhoods in Michigan, in Ohio, and Florida. Because I want inclusiveness. I want the more of the population. If I had it my way, I would make the election day a national holiday. So people wouldn't have to juggle between what time do I get off work? Do I make it to the precinct in time? It is the most important exercise that we have that many people take it for granted. A lot of blood and treasure was spilled for that. Not too long ago, people, because of the color of their skin in this country, couldn't vote. We used to have black and white water fountains. In 1960s, we lost 5 great leaders. They were all assassinated just to integrate the southern part of the country. We lost President John F. Kennedy. We lost Dr. Martin Luther King. We lost RFK, Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General. We lost Medgar Evers. We lost Malcolm X. And then we lost Harvey Milk, the first elected gay official in California who got shot in his office for being gay by one of his colleagues. A lot of blood has been, 1960s is not too long ago. Patrick keeps talking about he wants to think positive, he wants to think positive. But you know what they say? Those who don't learn from history, they are doomed to repeat it. I want to be positive also, but I want to learn from the mistakes have been made and correct those mistakes. I don't want to wallpaper over it. You can't do, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same result over and over and over. I will work, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, I will work with the current board as best as I can, so long as their legal and moral compass is in conformity with what the citizens of Scio Township want. But where they try to become autocratic, dictatorial, exclusionary, I will fight them with every ounce of my being, hoping for the next elections for people like yourself and ourselves to vote in the people based on what they have done. Please remember, this group right now is handicapping Scio Township. Mr. McLaughlin talks about, having a lawsuit is really unnecessary, it makes the township look bad. But who caused the lawsuit? How many times did they ignore the clerk and her admissions that you are taking my statutory duties away from me? You left her no choice. You systematically took away power from her at every turn to try to cut her down to the size, as you called it. No, in the newspapers, Scio Township looks like a very unstable government currently. We are honestly like a banana republic. Many of the businesses are having second thoughts about, do we want to invest in here? Do we want to move in here? Our infrastructure is at a dismay. I don't hear anybody talking about it. The sewage pipe from, again, I will repeat this, from Scio Township to Washington, it is so old that if it breaks, we're going to have the largest environmental disaster in the history of Washington County, bigger than the plume. I don't see any action to follow the recommendation of building a duplicate one next to it.
Okay, Jillian, your summary?
Wow, yes. I have quite a bit here. First of all, I believe that most of us are positive and we want to live in a positive community. However, ignoring issues because we want to be positive is not positive. We need to focus on issues. We need to create solutions. In fact, to go beyond that, we need to look to the future and figure out what could happen in the future. What do we need in the future and base it on action right now. Not get caught up in problems. People that focus on problems are always living in problems. We have problems. However, I like to look at them as challenges for us to overcome and grow from. Not once did I say that the millages were mismanaged. That's not what I said. I said that our finance department is lacking, and that's why we've had all these mistakes. How can we have all the wants, all the good things, all the fun things when we can't handle what we have in Township Hall with the infrastructure, with the basics? Scio Township is not facing bankruptcy. That was not what was said. It was said that if we didn't have the 1.8 or 4 billion revenue, we would have been bankrupt a long time ago because We do not have the financial staff. We do not have the planning. We do not have what is necessary to create a solid local government. And I want to clarify something here. In the past 4 years, I have met people that are Democrats, Republicans, independents, and somewhere in between all of those parties. And the people that have come forward with me, talking with me, and their problems, their issues, they all want openness, transparency. They want a government they can trust and somebody that can help them with their issues. They're not saying, oh, I'm a Republican, that's why they don't talk with me, that's why they don't help me. I'm a Democrat, that's why they're not helping me. That's not the issue. The issue is we all want the same type of government, which is to serve the people. We're a community, we live here together. There's no reason why we can't make this a win-win for everybody. We have the same outcomes. It's just the process and getting there. And we have to put aside our ego agendas. A public servant does not have an ego. They shouldn't have an ego because they're there to serve the community. Talk about ethical dilemma. When I was involved in the township with the garbage issues, I had a choice at that point. I was working 60 hours a week. I was dragged to a meeting. I didn't want to go. And I saw the lack of transparency. I saw the manipulation. And I could have gone back home and just went on with my life working 60 hours. But I was only going to solve the garbage issue. And here I am 4 years later. Yes, I could have walked away, but I didn't. I was compelled to do something to make a positive change. I plan on staying here in Scio, and I am committed to making this a better place for all of us.
Excuse me, I want to address something. Something was pointed out. As you all know, I've never done this before. And I'm just very pleased at how it went. It was pointed out that Jillian did not seemingly get the last question. And we were running not by the number of questions that each candidate got, we were running on a specific time. And so at 11:40, we needed to shift to the end of the program. So if that does come up, I wanted to let you know. And Jillian, I apologize.
I didn't even realize.
Okay, so, all right.
Are you gonna give me another one?
Anyways, you all were awesome. The audience, thank you for being here. And those of you on Zoom, hello.
There's been about 25 to 30 people come and go during.
Okay,
Wow.
nice. That's great. And it will be uploaded onto YouTube today. And thank you, Rob. And I think we're done. We're at 11:58 and a half. And any of you want to have a final word?
Were we gonna have 15 minutes afterwards?
Yeah, so the Zoom will be shut down. And then any member from the audience can discuss for 15 minutes with the candidates if you would so desire.
Mingling.
We could leave Zoom on.
Yeah,
We'll leave Zoom on. Excuse me.
Is that a mingling opportunity? Or
Absolutely.
Bingo.
However, casual. I throw out the word casual.
Pam, a round of applause.